There we go.
All right. Now we'll call the meeting to order for July 31st, 26th, Entertainment Community Improvement District Board. Bill,
I'll be happy to.
appreciate it.
But I would just thank you for this country as I walk in this to this city hall. I appreciate the flag that's flying out there. Thank you for just the symbol of freedom. We pray as the election is coming in August, we just pray that people will go out and vote. And just pray that the right person will be in the office. We pray, Father, just for the city, we thank you this summer that we do have a bunch of tourists coming here. And we thank you that you bless us with that. And we pray, Father, that as we meet together today on the CID, that you be in the midst of our discussion and our talk and our thought. We pray for wisdom. We pray that you give us the wisdom and the direction. And I pray that the things that we do, that we be honored you and reflecting what's best for the city, what's best for the tourists, and what's best for the local. Thank you again for the opportunity to serve you in this capacity. We just ask that you be in the midst of our talk today. I pray all this in the wonderful name. Amen.
Thank you, Billy. Paul, can we do a roll call, please?
Sure. So Chuck is present. Is Brian?
Yep.
Brian's there. Alex is there. Kathy
Yes.
is at the end of the table. Mike,
Here.
Mayor is down at the end, and Billy is present.
Okay, thank you. First item on the agenda is approval amendments for June 26, 2024. The only note I have is to make a small change from contact to contacts. Make it plural for the part in regards to everybody being notified, all owners on the property. I don't have the exact details, but it was my note here. Thank you, Nan, for that.
It's actually singular instead of.
Oh, sorry, contact
Has been
instead
made
of
of all
contacts.
owners, right.
Contact have been made to all owners. I apologize. So that's the only adjustment that I have. So we just had a chance to review them and they're good. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
Correct? Absolutely.
Second.
Second, Brian. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is to discuss approved cost estimates for guardrail, parking lot barrier fence design concepts. Jeremy,
Hey, hi, how are you guys today?
fantastic.
Good, good. Just a note here, we're not gonna be talking about costs today. We're gonna be talking about the design elements. And so, just need to make that clear. Oops, there we go.
There's one.
Oops, clear as mud. Hang on one second and I will share my screen. I've always got to change, when I change modalities here, I get. Share, there it is. Hopefully you guys can see that now. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Awesome. Love that. Okay. Very good. All right. So today we want to talk about, we've got several things to look at. I want to, we've touched on this just very, very briefly. I gave you a little precursor in the last meeting, but today just want to touch on, the guardrail. There's a barrier system. We're going to talk about the core 10 planters and some thematic items, but on the guardrail in particular, we are looking at self-effacing steel for the material that's consistent with that's a consistent material with all of the things that we're doing. What we are suggesting here is that instead of using the rail system that has the pickets that you always see everywhere, we feel like our project can support something that looks a little bit different. And if, we have opportunity, this is actually a panel that it's not a custom panel. This is actually a panel that's available to us and supports our theme pretty well. And so this laser cut Ozark Stream panel is what we would call that. Could be inserted as an accent panel on on our guardrail. And we've got several things to look at, so we'll look at those and then we can come back. We also have parking lot barrier screen, and instead of using the same thing everywhere, we're saying, hey, look, let's stay thematic and let's look at creating the barriers that are required. When we turned our our required plans in, or the landscape plans, there are a number of areas where we just don't have the right barrier, the space for a green barrier. And so the other options to do are to do fence barrier, but we don't think that a fence is really appropriate in this case. We could always do a picket barrier, but we think that coming in with something that's a little bit more thematic and looking at this Ozark Mountain kind of wavy, kind of hearkening back again to our theme is a good idea. So in those areas where we have barrier required, we're suggesting this parking lot barrier screen. There's another option to that, and that's the Ozark Woodland screen. And so, I'd love to hear your thoughts if you prefer one or the other, or if you think that mixing it up a little bit would be a good idea. We do have several places where these barrier screens are required and that we're suggesting, and I'll show you those locations in a moment. And then again, we are looking at using the core 10 steel planters in 3 different systems. One is a system where it's just a low planter that retains a plant bed. We do have some low berming and such on our project, and so it's nice to be able to hold back a little bit of that grade and or separate the plant beds from walking surface. We also have some areas where we are providing this system, the system where it's actually a planter edge, and we're putting a bench on top of it. The bench, again, kind of in the same theme as the benches and such that we've shown you, the benches and swings that we've shown you, same materials. Only in this case, we have this is a system that actually comes with a light right at its base. And so we're incorporating these into our streetscape so that we've got some lighting, in addition to the other types of lighting that's going on. And then finally, we do have some areas where we have retaining walls, more or less, and it's the same system. It's still the core 10 system, and this just shows you a little bit of a cutaway where you can see how that system works and where the light shines down at its edge. Additionally, the sculptural ribbons, we have identified these opportunities to put some sculptural pieces in that landscape. And so we don't have very many opportunities for that, but we we do want to try to sprinkle some of those things throughout the corridor to, again, to keep our theme going and to kind of pick back up on that. The things that you see on the screen are not designs that are suggested. I repeat, the things you see on the screen are not suggested designs. The way that these items will be bid is we will establish a budget for those pieces. And we will bid this out on a performance specification so that you all can have a little bit more tighter control over the actual design of those sculptures if you would like after the bids are awarded. But the price would stay the same, and then you'd be making decisions about that at a later time. So let's talk about the locations of some of these things. I've got the plan. Our corridor is shown in 3 pieces here. You can see that we have identified a place for a weathered steel planter. We also have guardrail. We have a retaining wall on this corner that's rather significant, and so there's guardrail all along here. We are calling out our ribbon gateway, and that's the large feature that goes across the road, over the road. Planters, periodically, we have a lot of the planter edge. They're not always really tall. Sometimes they're short. Sometimes they have benches. And then another little piece of ribbon. And then these asterisk marks are where we have barrier screens or screening that's required at our right-of-way edge between planting, used not only as a screen, but also for safety purposes. That's the purpose of having those required screens. And so we've got a few of those called out in this particular section of plan. As we move on down the corridor, and hopefully you're seeing that aerial under there, and we've called out a few little landmarks. Here's the Toy Museum, for example. Here's Whitewater. And you can see where we have some of these things, called out. This intersection at Pat Nash is a good opportunity for us to have a focus. It's kind of midway through our corridor. And so having a nice sculptural element in that area is good place. And then finally at the end, same distribution, you can see that we're just evenly spacing things, and the barrier screens weren't evenly spaced necessarily purposely, as opposed to they were required in these areas. But as it turns out, they're spaced like that very evenly down throughout our corridor. So that said, I do have another slide, but I would like to open this. I have a schedule slide that I would like to conclude with, but should I go ahead and go to the schedule slide before we have any comments on the items that I presented?
I think we go ahead and comment in regards to this stuff, and then we can go to the schedule after.
Very good.
So, let's just go down the room. Kathy, you want to start?
Oh. I like any of the things you proposed, as far as the fence panels. I think those are beautiful. I didn't like the rivery one as much. I like the stick one kind of better. I thought that was a little more outdoorsy. But you do see that everywhere now. That's kind of more in today, so it might start to phase out later. Yeah, thank you, Jerry. I think that's kind of cool. And I even think the bubbly one, or whatever that's supposed to be, water with bubbles, or I'm not sure, but that's cool too. I really don't have a preference. How about that? That's a good summary statement. I'm open. Whatever the group likes.
Mr. Mayor?
My taste is in my mouth. This is my. So I'm gonna subordinate my opinions to the artistic guys.
Billy?
Jeremy, I know this is a sketch. I don't know what it looked like in real life. I know that we tend to think that this is gonna look like that.
Mhm.
That's the only thing I have an input, it's just that, and the question is, I know that some benches have lights, so will there be a light to, and go around this, you know, cause I know that what you look at in the daytime also look different than nighttime. So
Sure.
I was wondering what, if he has some sample of things that got done, that would be good to get a picture of what's out there, this thing. And,
Mhm.
most of the time that I think about a lot of stuff is the opportunity of taking advantage of, I know we do a lot of stuff, it's called, four season. You have Christmas, holiday, whatever it is that we may want to engage to some kind of theming or whatever it is, opportunity, they may not be, that, all it is a fencing, but also there's benches, there's all kind of stuff that you're showing in this thing here. I like all this, I just don't know what it looked like in a real life. That's all we see in sketch, I know every time I look at sketch and I look at real life, they're completely different, especially if it's color is a big thing. If say this is dark, wet, and nighttime is showing a different picture. So I mean, and when I look at it is like Kathy say, she likes it, so it can become what you call a photo opportunity in some stuff. So whatever we do, I always think about what is it that we do to make it more like, like space, like the benches that I'm sure that's gonna be a photo opportunity. But I know that people can be taking picture of the arches. People are taking a picture of a lot of stuff, so I think I like a lot of choices, I just don't know what they look like in real life, like you say. The design is not in there yet, especially some of the thing that you show. So, but as far as the formation, the template, and also, I mean, they all look good. I don't see, especially, I know, and mentioned about a lot of the focus of the natural thing about the whole thing, about the, the CID in terms of the 76, make it, that was the number one thing that people like to see, natural landscaping. And all this fits in all that, even this, like, look at this, it look like a water or, and what, even if it doesn't show, if people understand, if it's a nice, what you call thematic way of displaying, abstract. I mean, you look at stuff that's going on today in Paris, some of the stuff they did in terms of taking advantage of South Icon. They do that kind of stuff. When you see it here, it's what they're doing. And so I think I think you're there. It'd be neat to see what the fitness look like is what, so I think that's some of my input.
It's really,
I think they're great. I'm the show guy, so I'm probably gonna be looking more fun or whimsical, which I certainly think, for the guardrails, the bubbles or the water look there. And also the woods or the stick for the barrier, which I think, that makes me think I've arrived in Branson or the mountain country. But, and I really appreciate Billy's perspective, designs are not always what the finished product is. And I think that's an important thing we've got to move forward with.
Especially when it comes to scale, like this one here, the scale looks good. So, those are important in terms of how you, the scaling of what image that you want to show is a real important.
right?
I agree, and I like the overall variations and looks and. I have a question, Jeremy, when you say those guardrails are required. Can you tell me maybe why they're required in those areas that they are required?
Sure. So there's a difference between guardrail and parking lot barrier. The guardrail is required because there's an 18-foot drop. I think that's all that I need to say probably about that.
Yeah, perfect. All good.
Concept looks great. It's just, cost again, right? Cost estimates. And I know we didn't want to talk about that for some reason today, but, I mean. that's
Well,
a
I'll cover
factor
that.
to-
I can
Okay.
address that if you like.
That's great. That'd be awesome. It's just that of course factors into what you can and all can't do and custom pieces for you. So we can have the most beautiful concept, but if we can't afford it, it's not worth it. So thanks, Jeremy, for offering to do that now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my artistic input would be directly related to cost and availability.
Well, so I guess
Sure.
the thing for options that you throw in for cost, because they're not mass produced.
Well, that's-
She did mention one that's the standard.
This one here.
That one there.
Yeah,
But I didn't want to bring steel versus aluminum
right.
being cost, but that's these are aluminum, which is probably more expensive than steel and so on.
And in terms of cost, what I would do is work with what you call pick and choose your battle. Because your biggest thing is called entertainment. Is this in the background, or is it in the front? So, the question is, when you do something like that, that's what I would, it's really not a hard thing, because if it's not, if it's a back in the house, people not gonna see it, but if it's gonna be so far away from the street and all that stuff, but I think somewhere in there, you gotta pick and choose, it's okay, we're gonna do this and this and this, but it's the icon that everybody's gonna take a picture of. They're not gonna take a picture of picket fence, this kind of stuff, so I think those are the things that we have to, you can, that. The other thing that I like to hear is actually is from Ann, because Ann has been involved in the design.
And I wanna hear from anybody that's
Yeah.
here, and, Gail, Steve, everybody on that as well. On that guardrail, what's the height restriction on that? So I understand the 18-foot drop, we're required to have a guardrail, but is there a specific?
42 inches.
Is it the standard 88 height,
Yeah,
42
Yeah.
inch?
well, guardrail, yeah.
Because
Correct.
my concern is you're at an 18-foot drop somewhere, you got a guardrail, you're spending all this money on the guardrail, it's not gonna be a photo op because there's no way for anybody to take a picture of it. So, I mean, wouldn't we maybe look at doing something more basic, same colors,
Yeah,
but basic in that general area? So that we're not spending the money on something that's not necessarily gonna get the opportunity from the guests.
yes.
So that was
So-
my number one.
Sure.
And then number two question I have is, how are these when it comes to heat? You've got 95-degree heat outside right now, you've got sun beating on all of this stuff. If a kid walks up, puts his hand on it, is he gonna get a first, second degree burn? So, from an operational standpoint, we have to look at that perspective too, so that would be a concern of mine as well. As for the design, I get involved in design, but once the designs are done, I build the stuff, I don't really get to pick the design much, so I stay out of that, I'm kind of with Kathy and the mayor when it comes to design stuff, I think they're all pretty though. So. And Steve, Gail.
Well, I think all of these designs follow what our overall theme is, right? And you don't carry a theme with one or two photo ops, you carry it with a lot of detail within an area. So if it can be done in a cost-effective way or a similar cost way, I think the more nice little details you can add to this organic, natural theme that we're trying to create, the more impressive it's gonna be. So as long as it's affordable and safe and does the job that needs to be done in terms of protecting pedestrians, I think the designs are right.
Just in general, process always a background to that, I understood her to say those were readily available, they were not custom.
Yeah, me
So
too.
was that just on the first one or is that on all of them?
My understanding it was a Ozark Stream, was a standard one that they were.
Are the others too though?
They're all available. They're all standard and available. Yes.
Okay, so if that's being the case on there, from my perspective, it's a variety really does add to that, as many of those we can do. And change the look up and down through there, thinking ahead to the next sections, we're gonna have lots of those, but being able to break that up from that point through there, would be important. Same thing would be on the ribbons, the design of those. Jeremy, do those have lighting on the ribbons as they're planned at this point?
You're talking about the core 10. I'm having just a little bit of trouble hearing you guys, but
On the ribbons, are the ribbons planned to be lit, like?
oh, yes. Are you talking, the sculptural items will all have up lights? Yes, of course.
Okay, I just think that's real important because they're gonna be more visible than the other, but I think they'll look great. The variety to me would be real important.
Bill, you got anything?
So, they're all better than what we have today. So Jeremy, I think you got some focal points. And the one that looks like tree trunks and sticks and branches, I think that goes into your focal points. And the ones that, where it's not so, what should I say, not so decorative, probably goes where it's not, assuming that that one costs more than the others because there's more detail. And somebody talked about heat. Well, you're right on. The more metal you have, the more heat you're gonna generate. Are these all steel?
They're all aluminum
They're all aluminum powder
with a
coated?
core tin. They're aluminum with a core tin finish.
Okay. The other thing you might want to take into account is what you can see through. From a safety standpoint, when it's.
Where you can see through, what can kids stick their hands through or their heads through and stuff like that.
Liability wise,
Put their heads through any of it, yeah.
Liability wise, though, over that 18-foot drop, you have to have it obvious that if you climb over. you're good to go.
The ASTM is gonna guide you all the rules into opening through the height, through this kind of stuff that.
They all, yeah, they all meet code. They all meet code.
Yeah, and then the one that people are saying is the ribbon and bubbles. That's really supposed to be rock, isn't it?
It's,
Whatever you meant.
I was gonna say, I mean,
I see bubbles.
I saw rocks.
And so if that's Jameser, can you get a real picture, probably a website, can you get a real picture of that building so you can see it?
oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I like to get a picture of all of them if they're standard.
Yeah.
And on those bubbles, that could be an LED screen we can sell advertising on.
And that would be inexpensive too.
yeah, that would be nice.
Well, what's interesting, we did a cutout like that at Bensonville one day, and it looks good in the drawing, but when I there, because the way the lights shine and all that stuff, we couldn't see the logo. So it was the first thing that's, okay, we made a mistake, so. I don't know how much fencing and railing we're doing. But the one thing that we witnessed is just like Kathy mentioned something that's interesting. So, well, this is pretty normal. I've seen this everywhere. How come we don't do something unique if we're gonna buy a lot of railing? That has this, it could be as much as just the Branson logo. I don't know, but I don't know we have a bunch of creative people in the world that can, there's an opportunity to say, okay, this is what we see everywhere. What I saw at the Paris Olympic was this, some of the stuff they did, of course, that money is no object to people in the Olympics. But I think also, if there's something that is only recognized in the Branson as far as the fencing, but it's, again, you gotta pick and choose. This is a fencing. This is not the icon you take a picture of.
Right.
So, but there's also an opportunity to say, if you have the logo or something simple, I don't know. But I think there's someone in there, somebody has to think about that.
Yes,
Because
we can,
at the end of the day, At the end of the day, maybe you can't afford it, number one, number two, you may not wanna do it. Because it's not, it's really, is like I said, it's a back to house kind of deal, it's not in the front of the house, so. But I also know that we have opportunity trying to do something separate in terms of 76. I mean, the things that we do below the ground, nobody's gonna know, it is what we do above the ground. So this is an opportunity, if this is being repeated so much somewhere. We gotta do something that people say, wow, this is Branson. Somebody did that and thought about this and say, that's cool.
Yeah, so headed towards insert an 8-foot custom panel.
I don't know.
So that ties it together.
It could be anything. If someone is, this is an opportunity to be creative. Someone is gonna be creative with it. And still meet all the ESTM, all the stuff that's gotta do and fit the costs. But if we're gonna buy a lot of fencing, let's do something unique. I mean, we are basically gonna, you look at what we're doing from one end to the other thing, nobody's gonna see under the ground. It's what above ground, so this is an opportunity to show we are doing something, I mean, like you say in segment 3. There's a lot of complaint, you don't really see.
Yeah.
I mean, us that know that the power is buried, yeah, you can recognize that. But the rest of the thing, yeah, they done this and then this, but it was not like, wow.
It was not what, but that's great. But along your line here, I think to keep in mind that this fencing is really what it is. It's gonna be low, it's not gonna be a big
Yeah.
house. To have those icons that you're talking about really, to me, would be more in the ribbons or something that even higher that's gonna catch your eye more.
Yeah.
That is.
But it's a complementary thing, you got a focal point and you got the behind the scene.
Yeah. If you- but
If the backdrop shows that we have an opportunity to be creative. And it has a symbol that is recognizable only in Branson, why not take a
Yeah.
as a backdrop?
I agree with that. I think it's again, kind of going back to.
Yeah.
Where your budget's going.
Yeah,
Maybe musical notes.
so there you go, I mean, those kind to me is, it's how does, what's that? Kind of box thinking that someone is not doing it. Cause it may already exist somewhere, I think, that's the other thing.
What about like the names of former entertainers that made Branson great? Make it almost like Hollywood with the stars, right?
Yeah, that's, even all those stuff to me, nobody's thinking about that and we should.
I would actually, I think that base, most of in 10 years from now, the wonderful entertainers have been here.
Yeah.
Presley maybe in that same situation, who knows on that, but it will date you.
Yes.
And fairness to Branson, those entertainers have, been here the last 30 years or so. And entertainment's been in Branson for many, many years.
Yeah.
So I would caution you on putting any kind of names of anything on it.
But in a creative, there's no wrong thought. So all we have to do is at the end of the day, we may not have to come up with any idea of that science. And so, but if someone is, in critical sense, there's no knowing and so open. Don't figure out the cost to go with it. The liability and all that stuff has to think about it, but we have an opportunity to tell a story. Are we telling the story? And that's all we're saying. I'm not saying that there's anything, I think the question with Journey, she has a whole team of people that's supposed to be creative. That guy there, can't see the landscape guy, but I'm sure if you give him some kind of criteria, what we want to do, and if there's nothing and we can't go nowhere, then that's a different story.
Well, I think we also have to take into consideration the timeline of this project and everything associated with that. I mean, we're gonna go back and start redesigning stuff anyway from nature and things that she's been working on.
To me, the thing would be, is the last thing would be put up.
Well, and I agree with you.
And it'd be also, to me, it's the only thing that tells you the story.
Well, and I agree with you that it's the last thing that's gonna be put up, but the problem is we've gotta get pricing
Yeah.
together, we've gotta start looking at bonding, we've got all of these things, and we don't know what it's gonna cost to do custom panels and things like that. Is that gonna be a 5% markup, or is it gonna be 50% more than what our expectations are? So I'm just cautioning on that, because.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, that's what rubber meets the road.
It could push us.
Yeah.
So, anybody have any other comments on?
I just was thinking that I think the creative brainstorming happened when we did the threats with the stakeholders and with many of the people in this room too. And we need to kind of stick with that theme and keep moving forward. If we keep trying to recreate and redesign, it's not just gonna cost time, it's gonna be cost money and both. So I think we've got our ribbons, we've got our theme. I think we need to let the professionals keep moving forward and not
Not to say,
not keep revisiting the.
right, not reinventing, but that's not to say that there's not an opportunity to throw in music notes.
Yeah.
Or a logo on a piano.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, as they're being developed,
Yeah.
not recreate the whole thing. Yeah.
You actually could insert 8-foot panel.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
4 miles or whatever it is, ever so often, tie the whole thing together.
Yeah. And they're,
Yeah, maybe it's like A6, something like that, but every other one or every 10 one is different, yeah.
and they look like they're pretty interchangeable based on the
Yeah.
design. You know, I think that's something that, so.
As we move forward, what Anne's saying, we are not moving away from retheming.
Right.
As we look at detail, we're in detail space right now.
Absolutely.
Because the light fixture is gonna be like that. There are not too many things above the ground that we can have and say so. This is gonna impact the telling the story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other comments, questions, anything else related to this part?
That's good.
Does that give you any direction, Jeremy, or are you all over the place now?
I'm just gonna proceed. I will say, I mean, I do want to let you know that we also identified the opportunity for customized panels and that, you know, there may be some possibility of identifying a place or two where a customized panel might be a really nice backdrop for, you know, for something, and those things can be included as bid alternatives if you like.
Yeah.
And that way you can either accept the cost or not accept the cost based on, you know, real bid costs as they come in. With regard, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just calling. Sorry.
So.
Sure.
Jeremy, on that particular slide, we all focused on the right-hand side, but the left-hand side is there too. And I was at a hotel in Reno where they had the left-hand side and then the swimming pool. And it's pretty industrial looking, but it's also cheap. You know, and I think you just gotta pick your places.
Sure. Okay.
I did have a question on the parking ones. Are those required? Are those going back of curb because we don't have the green space, correct?
They separate the parking lots that are right up against the right-of-way line. They separate that parking from our walkway, if you will, in those areas.
Are those required?
Those are required.
Really?
I
Can you
don't
go to
have,
that slide again? Can you go to that slide?
I'm sorry, I might have missed that question. What was that? What was that?
They're asking you to go to the slide showing
The parking.
parking.
Oh, yeah, I can. Let's see.
Yeah, oh, no, yeah, no. No, the detail, the sketch
Okay. Sure.
That's just,
is before that one.
that's any of the
Well, that's
options.
So I was gonna ask a question, as like your question.
Yeah.
Cause I didn't understand where is that going.
Well, that's why I wanted,
No,
I wanted to see on the map where it's
Yeah.
on. It's on the back of the curb, so.
No, the other ones, this is an option or,
This is an option.
no, I'm talking about the one before that.
It's an option as well.
Okay,
Those are all the options, but,
yeah,
and
yeah.
even the string.
See
was an option.
see the car,
It's-
see that sidewalk? And see there, and
Yeah.
I'm just understanding why does it require railings there?
And that's what I wanna know is why is it required? Because I'm pretty sure in segment 3, we have spots that we don't have that.
That may be, when we submitted the plans so that the city is meeting their own codes. So this is a public project. And it was determined in the beginning that we wanted to be able to meet every code that was required. If you have a developer that comes to you and they bring a project like this, they have to have these same sorts of things. Obviously, they wouldn't do them maybe this way. We want them to do them this way, but they might not. Anyway, so we're meeting the requirements that the city has on their books right now. And I think that we have successfully done that.
Yeah, I just heard what you said, but I'm trying to get my arms around having a fenced area between a parking lot and the sidewalk. Logic says somebody gets out of the car, they want to walk to the sidewalk.
Or maybe they think they put their car in park, but didn't. And the car starts to roll forward and run someone over? Is that what we're trying to prevent?
That's essentially what you're trying to do. But I mean, I think you all can speak better to your regulations than I. I would say that when we go to the plan, if you look at the places where we have, barrier screens, again, we're right here. Sometimes we have the ability, to have green space in between. And when we do, we don't have, we're able to use the green space, the shrubs, the plantings as a barrier, as a screen, if you will, or a barrier. And every development project that is submitted to the city has to meet those requirements. You have to meet landscape requirements, and one of the options in the landscape requirements when you cannot or space doesn't allow you to have green plantings is to put a fence. But as opposed to putting a fence like others might use, we're doing something that's a little more customized to our project.
We'll look into that more too and find out if that's maybe something we should evaluate.
Yeah, I was gonna say 36-inch fencing around all that, but
That's a lot.
that's the main thing.
But it's only when there's not green space, you
Yeah.
understand?
Yeah,
Right? If
it's a-
grass, a couple bushes, you don't have it,
We
right?
understand
Okay.
that, so say you have an 8-foot sidewalk and no ability for green space. I
Yeah.
get that, but I'm curious as to when that went into code and everything associated with it, because like the wax museum.
Don't bring any attention to anything that you don't want us
Hey now,
looking into.
hey now.
I don't want you.
Hey, yeah,
For example, the wax museum,
in theory, hypothetically,
no, this is reality.
no, it's
For,
not.
for 20 years, our parking lot was set up to where it was. You had a 5-foot sidewalk, maybe a 5-foot sidewalk, and then the parking was right on the back of that curb. There was no screening.
I think it's grandfathered.
Yeah.
So-
we're trying to-
Well, it could have been grandfathered, but with the amount of work that we did on that property, I would have seen the city come in and say, when we did building permits, no, you gotta come up to code on, because we had to put sprinkler and everything else in, so.
Jeremy's got something for you.
Yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
I do indeed. We are designing a complete street, and complete street projects are different than just any other project that you're gonna put out there. This is a streetscape. We're trying to create an experience. You could probably ask the city to waive the requirement, but when you do, then we have very little hardscape or structural type improvements in our space that tell you that you're in a corridor, that separate that corridor from anything else. Those barrier screen sections are not very long, but they are an introduction of an improvement of something that is thematically organized within the space on a regular basis to help carry you through this space.
So Jeremy, this is Kathy, just real quick. Do you have a ballpark idea? How many linear feet are we talking about? And you don't have to answer it now. Let's just say that. Can you get back to us on how many linear feet would be required if we would not be required if we remove that?
Sure. You bet, I
right?
can.
Just that, where there's no, because that would help us make a better decision. And then we all can
Okay.
have a conversation again, is that something you wanna continue with? If it's not a lot of money in the big picture, maybe you're like, you
Yeah.
know what, keep going with it, because it looks beautiful. But Jerry, I appreciate the artistic, angle of it for sure. But dollars and cents always, that way we can weigh it out.
You bet. So one
Also,
thing that
this
I
is
do wanna
another
cover
part of
costs.
Business is that this is gonna be blocking as well. You know, there's
Yeah.
that aspect we have to look
And it's a
at.
pain when you wanna walk from your car and get right on the sidewalk.
But it's also a guest experience. It's the difference between walking in a parking lot and walking on a corridor. Right? When you're walking and there's parked bumpers on one side of you, it feels less safe and it is less safe to some extent. And it's like you're walking through a parking lot instead of like you're walking on a promenade, a corridor in a pedestrian way that's designed for you and not just for the vehicles. I mean, I think we've had a state highway and a lot of parking lots and a lot of things that have grown up around it, right? And we're trying to make this instead a safe place and a comfortable place for pedestrians.
Do you want us to look into that? And work with Jeremy to come up with what that number is and bring it back to you all?
Yeah.
We can talk more about that.
Yes, please, yes.
Okay.
So. I'm ready. Are we ready? Are we ready to talk about the timeline?
Yep.
Yes, please.
Sorry, on the linear feet, it might also be good journey to see what is the maximum distance that someone would have to walk through a parking lot to get to the main sidewalk. Yeah, so we know that too. I think they're mostly pretty short spaces, but they may not be. Or maybe we need to put a little openings somehow.
Yeah.
Most of them have sidewalk connections to the businesses anyway at either end, so I'm happy to do all the things I've heard. Awesome. All right, so what you see on the screen right now, project timeline, the things that are bounded in the light red color are not things that Great River has a responsibility for per se, but they are all things that have an impact on our project schedule. We are, as we move into August, beginning tomorrow, which seems kind of crazy to me, but we are continuing our construction plan documentation. And at the end of August, we'll be coming to you for a budget review for the project. We're going to be able to tell you whether we are, below the budget or on budget or over budget. I do not believe that we are over budget. In fact, I think that most of the modifications that we've experienced throughout the project have eliminated some costs on the project. But as infrastructure is very expensive, we are actively looking at the costs for everything. We'll be developing the bid form. I'll share with you a blank bid form so that you can see what the items are. I won't be distributing the bid form prior to the bidding, but I will share with you how the bid form will be itemized so that you can better understand that at the end of August. From August to October, we will be finalizing the construction plan document. So there are always little tweaks to the construction plans that we are working on, and we'll be finalizing the contract and bidding documents. That's, there are some important things about the bidding documents that we have to get right. This is a public project, and in fact, we have a part of the project that was federalized when we got some funding, and so the medians themselves have to meet certain criteria that we may not have to meet on the rest of our improvements. And so the way that those documents are bid out will be very different. In October, we plan to advertise. November, open those bids. And in December, the idea is that we will award the project with a notice to proceed that gives a contractor enough opportunity to get themselves mobilized so that they can begin construction on January 1. We are still on target, although there are some things, and you have things on your agenda today to talk about in terms of right-of-way acquisition and such. The one thing that I want to point out here is that I know this is important. I know it's top of mind for all of you. Is financing the project and selling the bonds. I am not necessarily clear about what your plan is there. And we obviously, the project has to be funded in order for us to go out for advertisement. So a lot of times the bonding, and you know, there are people I'm sure that are on the call that are going to speak to this a lot more in a more educated way. I will just say that it's been my experience in the past that sometimes it takes a couple of months to make some of that kind of stuff happen. And we are August 1st tomorrow. So I went ahead and put it on the timeline because I think it's something that we need to be mindful of. And it's a part of the slide deck, so that you'll have it. Any questions about the project timeline that I can answer for you?
No, Jerry, I agree with everything you just said, and as we were talking about the previous topic with the screening and all the alternatives to that, this timeline kept coming up in my mind. Tomorrow is August 1st. I don't know that we provided enough information to. So I guess in August, the plan in August, our next meeting, are we going to be able to button up all those decision points with the screening and the planters and all that, so we can price it?
It's a great question.
Today time is on our side.
Yeah, it's a great question because I also have a note here. What else do you need approval from us on, Jeremy? For example, we talked about trees, the heights of trees and stuff like that. We brought back sight lines, but there was still, open-ended discussion there. Same thing with the sidewalk, the stamp, the color, there are questions in regards to that. This board only really has control of the above ground aspect of this project. Are we gonna get a final plan that says, okay, here's it's laid out, here's what the corridor is gonna look like from a plan view, from an elevation view. This is what our expectations are for this board to say, okay, great, move forward. I know that there's been businesses that have brought up to some of the people a part of this project asking about, what kind of plants are going to be installed. I understand this board has the control of this project, but we need to be good steward of all the businesses up and down 76 as well, to make sure people understand what's going on in front of their property.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it? I mean, is that going to be something that's presented for a final approval, or where are we at on that one?
So we've been stepping through this process, bringing you pieces as we've gone. If there's something in particular that you have a question about, I have felt like I've walked away with information and decisions. And so if you have questions about what decisions have been made, I guess we can go back to the minutes of the meetings and take a look. But I don't necessarily have questions on the concrete. I think that the most likely thing to do is to bid colored imprinted the whole way with an alternate of imprinted no color, just sealer, for the project. And I think you're gonna get your financial answers that way. We can do in our probable cost, we can give you some idea of what we think the difference is going to be, but in the end, you're not going to know the answers to your cost question, until we get to that point.
Well, I agree with that. And I appreciate you saying that, because that's actually the first I've gotten that response on the colored concrete. So, but there's still a question about site visibility for the trees. You put a 20-foot tree up and you're driving by a business, and that business is not going to be happy about that tree being there. In the joint use easement agreement that we had in segment 3, there was restrictions on the height of plants and the heights of trees because we did not want it to interfere with the businesses that run up and down 76. And that was something that was a big stakeholder item whenever we did the original joint use easement agreement on segment 3. Because I can tell you, I mean, I don't want a 15, 20-foot tree in front of a $1 million monument that's sitting in the face of my building.
Journey, is it possible to get kind of, I'm going back to my home builder days where we had like, you know, selection package finalizations, right? So where you could just kind of give a summary sheet for us on the things that you feel this group has already decided on. And then we can run it past through everybody again to make sure that they're comfortable with that, including the items that Chuck raised about trees and sidewalks and other design elements that you feel you've already got decisions on.
Sure. I mean, I'm literally gonna pull it from every presentation that we've done, but yes, ma'am, you bet.
That would be great. Thank you.
That would be helpful for me being new. 'Cause I don't know what.
For sure.
I'm coming inside
Sure.
this.
And so we have,
No, go ahead, please.
we have two meetings, according to this timeline, we have 2 more meetings and we're going out to bid.
2 more regularly scheduled ones, yes. We can always call another one if we need to.
That was gonna be my suggestion.
Well, and I believe that
You're at a critical point right now.
Yeah.
And a 2-week meeting seems to me would be very appropriate. Go through all of this again with the measures she's on.
you guys are still in my thunder because I think we're gonna have a follow-up phase in regards to after Todd has his update.
Yeah.
So I was gonna ask for that as well. So.
We just spent an hour on one item.
Yeah, Friday moving along quick, so I'm sorry. All right,
Feels like a Board of Alderman.
I won't say anything about Monday's teams either, because that was a long.
Right.
I sat in for a while.
I know, I tried to reverse.
But you did well, you did well. All right, let's go on to the financials of, the CIP finance.
So I am presenting the financials today in Cherie's absence, and they're being passed around right now. You should have all received the packet that I emailed you. Okay, so at this time, the revenue is at the top, the 2,422,914.27. The expenses are the 6,731,120.60, and that includes the 6 million that was reimbursed back to the city.
Excuse me, Cheryl, do you
Yes.
happen to know what time frame this is when it says 24?
She did not give me that information, but I'm gonna say probably June.
Says period 1 to 6.
I said, yeah, June.
Oh, okay, I'm just-
But you know, you wouldn't, I mean, I
Thank
think.
Sorry. Okay, the next is the year-to-date budget report.
Says at the top there. Yeah. where it says-
Which shows the fund balance of 9,765,8088. The next report is your balance sheet. Should show that same amount. Then you get to the 1% history for the SID. And right now, it's at a -1% decrease. Then at the bottom one, which is your year-to-date, we're up 3.7%. And then the next one just shows you the expenses that we've had for the last month. I will let you know that some invoices were turned in this week also to be paid, so you'll see some in July. And then the account detail history. Happy to answer questions if I know how to answer them.
Anybody have any questions?
1% tax collection is showing for the month of July, but that's. It's a problem in that line over for.
Yeah, it's reported.
It's reported, it's from probably May.
Yeah, but July wouldn't, this is just the 31st, so how would we even have it all collected for July?
That number is for May collection.
May collection.
At the end of May.
Yeah, I understand, but usually you don't see any numbers on the July line until the July has closed.
And it is showing seven months of collections, not
Right,
just six.
that's my point, yeah, and we're only, I thought. we
I
were
can
looking at
ask that
six.
question tomorrow
Okay,
and get back with me.
Well, we've got this new software that we're working through now, this new Tyler system,
Exactly.
right? And so I'm just assuming this is more real time than what we're used to having.
oh,
Am I right?
Could be possibly.
I mean, I know, I don't know. I'm just wondering if she just ran it through today,
I think
since
this is-
July's almost over kind of a thing.
I think this is, that we've always done. There's a 2-month lag.
No, I get that. I just said usually we would report out 7 months at this point, to Ann's point.
We always do.
We do?
Read the bottom there.
Yeah, I just thought we were always. Okay, okay.
And it could be, I mean, I don't know this, but it could be that the history is showing 7 months, even though the financial statements are for 6 months. Could be a different time basis.
I will find that answer for you.
and maybe it'll adjust after today's money comes in or something too, I don't know. Last week's maybe. I don't know.
I think it really is just the month that the revenue is booked, that's the month that it came.
Yeah, so how can we book July already? when
Yeah.
we're just July first?
Because you got tax revenue in July from the prior month, so you book it in July, that's your income in July. Tax income from the prior.
Okay.
There's no way the merchants could report and pay.
That's right.
But especially with those things before they,
Yeah.
Put clarity on that. I wanted to make more clarity on that. Just make it real clear that this is a report through.
Whatever it is.
I can tell you that it was the same last month. It was, it showed it
That's right.
last month.
Right.
So.
I think it has for the last 20 years.
This month, you get the revenue, you have the month that the revenue came from.
Correct, because it's always a 2-month lag.
Thank you.
Always. Okay, any other questions on the financials?
Looks good going into this with 9.7 million.
Yes, sure does. Okay. Consideration of underwriter responses, Todd. Good luck.
Okay, good afternoon. Good to see you all in person versus being on the screen. I certainly like it much better being in person. As you may recall, at the end of last month, we received 4 responses for underwriter proposals. It was sent to 5 firms and we received 4 responses. And so since that time, we've gone through and summarized those at a very high level. Keep in mind, each of the responses was 20+ pages of information and numbers. And so this is a very high overview. This is something that I previously shared with Paul and we've
I haven't
talked.
shared it yet, sorry.
Okay,
Having problems. Apologize.
Did you print out some as well?
I did bring hard copies. Would you like for me to?
Yes, please, let's go ahead. Let's go. That's it.
What do I have?
Scan that. You go to the June. And we'll about to have some around.
Do you have enough or if I can step out and get you some?
I think
Still
I made 15 copies, so.
Still showing it.
You hold on.
Top of it. There's your,
Right there.
and so go back to the journey. Get one. Open that up.
All right, we're good.
Share screen.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that.
Well, good. So you do see that, Paul?
Yes.
So the 4 responses that we received, UMB Bank, Robert W. Baird, Stiefel Nicholas, and DA Davidson. And we've got that in there. One of the big items kind of midway down the page that we wanted to put in there was debt service coverage. And you may remember the discussion from about a year ago when we were doing some of our initial modeling. Not every dollar that you have is available to pay debt service, because bond investors will want you to have more than $1 to cover a $1 bond payment. And what that debt service coverage factor means, when you see either the 1.3 or the 1.25, you need to have $1.25 of revenue for every dollar of debt service. So the lower that number, the more revenue that can be used to go towards the bond payment. With that in mind, you can see that 3 of the responders were all at 1.25 coverage, and 1 of the responders were at 1.3. So still very close. And when we did our initial analysis a year ago, we were using 1.35. So we were even a little bit more conservative. So this is all good news. And I think it's also favorable news that 3 of the responders all were kind of at that 1.25 level. So that's a good part. The other item that came up during the review is it possible for the board to go through and have the bonds rated? And what a bond rating does is lowers your borrowing cost. And so again, if you are paying less in interest, that allows your dollars to go further. That provides more project costs. So it certainly behooves us to try to get the interest rate or the borrowing cost as low as possible. And the bond rating would do that. Now, there's uncertainty with the bond rating, and S&P, Moody's are the 2 primary rating agencies. We think in this instance that S&P is probably the likely course that we would go down. And so we've done our own internal rating analysis and believe that based on our scoring metric that it is possible that we could go through that process and get a bond rating and lower that cost of funds. So there's kind of 2 primary paths here that's available. One would be with a bond rating. The second approach would be with a non-rated issue. And each of the underwriters in their responses, at least for 3 of the 4 responses, they differentiate what their underwriting fees would be if it's a rated transaction versus a non-rated transaction. And it's never easy. These are kind of difficult proposals to go through and kind of make your way through. But coming back to the cost structure on the underwriting fees, the firm that provided the lowest underwriting fee for the rated transaction just happens to have the highest underwriting fee if it's a non-rated transaction. And then you can see the others are not quite as big of a difference. From our vantage point, I think UMB is probably, their platform is certainly less robust than the other 3. Certainly fine people, it's a good bank, but I think their expertise and experience with this type of a transaction, it's just less than the other 3 responders. So from my perspective, I think I'm glad that they responded, but I think from my perspective, we would probably put that off to the side and then focus more on the other 3 responses. So I'm going to maybe pause there, Chuck, and see if you've got any comments, and also if Paul has anything he'd like to add at this point, and kind of keep the discussion going.
So I met with
with Paul and Todd a couple of times over the last couple of years, just going through this stuff. Because it's newer to me, so I didn't quite understand completely, but I've got a better understanding. So I asked Todd a couple of questions. I asked, okay, so what do you think our percentage of being great is? And Todd came back in his opinion, it's just an opinion. He believes we're 75% chance of being rated through this process. Because basically I was looking through this and I was like, okay, so we've got Ian Davidson at $5 rated and Baird at $9.50. You know, you're $160,000 variance between the two there. But from our discussion, Todd said, you know, yeah, they gave you a $5 rating, but kind of the looks of it, they're banking on being non-rated so that you have that $20. So say you go in and we get stuck at that 25% option of not being rated, then we're looking at almost a $300,000 difference. Yeah. So, so we had some discussions and you know, that's, I kind of look at this like we're kind of gambling a little bit on the direction we're going to go. So my initial thing with Todd and talking with Paul was, okay, let's bring it in here. Let's have the handout. Let's have a Q&A, explain everything to everybody. And then this is where I brought it up, where I was thinking about how we need to make a decision quick because we need to get into agreement. We need to start going through this bonding process. Maybe in a week after everybody's had an opportunity to digest and look at it, special meetings, and make a decision based on what we have. So that's kind of what my thought process. If anybody has any other thoughts or ideas, I'd love to hear them. But that was my thought process, and hopefully it was to talk with Todd and Paul. So.
What's your experience as far as getting this rated? Time and money to get rated?
Sure. It would fit into the normal bond process. It is an extra step. So once the bond documents were drafted, we would submit those to, and this probably Standard & Poor's, and then schedule a rating call. And so it would take probably at least an extra 2 to 3 weeks to go through that process. And as Chuck was kind of alluding to, I mean, there's no assurance that they would come back with the rating that would make sense to move forward with the rated transaction. So, you know, there is that possibility. We go through that process. We go through the time and the cost, and then we say, well, that's not the outcome we wanted. We're going to revert back and do a non-rated transaction.
And is this rating, Todd, is it A through D?
It goes, so like state of Missouri is AAA, and then, you know, AA is very good, single A, but for this type of an entity and structure, you know, we're looking at the BBB category.
Okay.
So it's below A.
Okay.
And, you know, if you think about it, you know, this is a single purpose entity. You have basically the one revenue stream with the sales tax, and you really have no ability. I mean, it's at the highest level. You have no ability to move that higher. So those are, you know, the primary reasons why you get knocked down on the rating scale. I think maybe more background on the 3 firms. Stifel does a lot of work around the state, a lot of economic development work in state as well as elsewhere. D.A. Davidson, they did do the Big Cedar development a couple years ago, where the bonds were issued through the Taney County IDA. So they've got certainly familiarity with the area. I also had worked with the firm in Hollister on a TIF transaction for the Menards. And so they're familiar. And then with Baird, they have a lot of experience in this area, maybe not quite as much in Missouri, but certainly very qualified, very knowledgeable in this area. and have other clients around the Midwest that they do this type of work for.
So you've done business with all of these.
I have, that's right.
Is it inappropriate to ask what your opinion would be?
I don't know that it's inappropriate. I mean, I really think that, I'm 75% based on our own internal analysis, 75% certain that when we go through this process, we're going to get a rating that would allow us to move forward. But there's always that possibility that, I come back to you in a couple months and say, okay, Mayor Chuck, we've gone through this process. The rating didn't come back the way we thought it would. We're going to have to proceed forward on a non-rated basis.
Yeah.
And so we don't know that now. We'll know that in 2 months. But as Chuck alluded to when we first spoke with him, there's a pretty big disparity in the underwriting responses from DA Davidson at the $5 to now all of a sudden it's jumped to $20. And had we known that at the get-go, then, you might have selected Stiefel or Baird.
Sure.
To do the underwriting.
So do we have, based on our timelines, do we have the time to go through the rating process? And
I think we can come back to talking about the timetable, because that's another, I think, important item to talk through, but I think it's the prudent thing to do. If it's going to lower your borrowing cost,
yeah,
my recommendation would be we need to do everything we can to get your borrowing cost as low as possible.
so Chuck, based on that information, do you think that this board would be in a position to make a decision instead of waiting a week or two to?
I'm completely open to what the board wants to do. This was something that it was a new process for me. It was something that I didn't know what other board members had familiarity with this.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure I could make an informed decision based on the information. And if, like, for example, we talked and then he went on vacation for 2 weeks. And I got on a call with him again.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to make sure I didn't have any further questions or anything like that. So I just want to make sure everybody's informed on what their decision is based on what's their percent. So-
For what it's worth, I'd be in favor, I'd support asking Todd to move forward on going down the rating route.
I agree on the rating route, but, and I don't disagree, but does that mean that we go with DA Davison? Right. Steve or Baird? Do we want to make that substantial gamble?
Roll of the dice.
I mean,
Yeah, 7 come 11.
that's what I told them on the call. I was like, it's a gamble. It's a substantial gamble.
You got it.
So that's why I wanted everybody to have an opportunity to hear it. Everybody have an opportunity to think about it and. I go to the casino on occasion, so.
Just clarify, that you have to pick this before you go to get a rating. Am I understanding correctly?
Yeah,
We do.
because, and
Everybody's on the same page.
I asked that question as well. It's like, well, can we say, yeah, we're just gonna go
I
with
just
you
want to
for
make
the
sure everybody's on
rating?
the same page of why.
If we're not
why
rated, we don't wanna go with you. And and Todd said that's not really an option.
So your conservative compromise is UMP banks.
Right.
What did you say?
Your conservative compromise is UMP
They're
banks.
the safe, yeah.
They're the safe in both cases. They're about middle of the road. But, and so I mean, I trust your expertise. What are you afraid of?
It's easy to get focused on fees and cost. But when we get ready to issue $36 million of bonds, the biggest cost of this is the interest rate. I mean, you're going to be paying back 60 million. And so we don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish, that we want to select an underwriting firm that's got very good distribution channels, that has a lot of expertise with this type of a transaction, that when we go to market, whether it's rated or non-rated, that they've got the ability and the experience to get the bonds sold at favorable interest rates.
So you
And-
can spend a little bit more money here, but maybe save a lot on the back end.
That's right. And so that's why I think the UMB platform is just a little less robust than the other three. And that's kind of why not UMB.
So Todd, my question is, like, everybody in this room doesn't trade on these big municipal bond markets or different bond markets. So who do you, I mean, isn't that what we would be asking is who do you think? Like, you would know who's got a greater distribution on the market than we would. Otherwise, I'd have to go Google Baird and start, right? I'm just saying, like, who do you recommend to us?
Yeah, and I think, I would say that based on the responses, I think that all three, putting UMB off to the side, I think the three responses we got are all firms that are probably equally qualified and have the ability to get the bonds sold at good levels. And the other, and I know that this is just maybe adding to more of not being able to differentiate between the three, but each of them also acknowledge that this is not just a single bond issue, that you've got other projects you want to do. And so we need to make sure that the structure that's put in place this year is conducive to allowing you to come back and do additional bonds in 2 years or 3 years, whenever the next phase begins to happen. So all three of those firms kind of acknowledge that and understand that, it's important not only to get this issue done, but we have to have provisions and procedures in place to come back later down the road and do the additional bonds.
So is the high roller table, the DA Davidson, is that like the high rollers?
Yes.
Right, is that a good way to say it? 'Cause I just think, where's Kathy's penny slots machine? Right? That's
fair.
That's
think that's
Baird.
fair.
So Baird is the most conservative, less risky, if you will, option, right?
A little more red.
That's what I thought.
Safe.
And DA Davidson you're choosing red or black.
Right, and it's all in, and all your chips.
Well, odds are a little better.
Yeah.
Even at 75.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
75% cheaper.
Yeah, Paul, you want to throw your 2 cents in?
No, I don't gamble, and so I'm kind of tracking with
We already had that
Kathy.
discussion.
Yeah, it's
Paul's
know,
fair
it-
guy.
yeah, I'm probably a bear
Mhm.
guy. I mean, they're all qualified. It's just, the spread is so great, and if you just if you pick wrong, then it's just a lot of money. You can't really undo it. You can't really say, well, the rated didn't work with Davidson, so I'm gonna go the non-rated route with Baird, because that's just set you back a couple of months. Plus, there's no guarantee that Baird would still be quoting you the 1250. Conventional wisdom is it would be higher because you're now going to dance with someone else that you didn't bring, and so why wouldn't they increase it?
Yeah.
The other thing is, and I'm not meaning to overstate this, but you will recall several months ago when I led you down the road of choosing a municipal financial advisor, I talked to you about the concept of Todd being a fiduciary. So his fiduciary duty is with the board. In other words, he has to give you advice in what is your best interest, not necessarily his or his firm's best interest. Underwriters are not bound by that same fiduciary. I know this is being recorded, so Davidson and the others, if you watch this, I know who you are. We've worked together. I'm not casting aspersions on your character, but at the end of the day, if you think, well, wouldn't they too want to do everything humanly possible to get it as a rated? Probably, but believe it or not, that's not a legal fiduciary duty obligation that they have. And so that's why that's the distinction between having an FA separate from an underwriter, and why we just didn't rush out and select an underwriter, to sell bonds, we wanted someone like Todd who put the CID first in helping us make these sort of decisions.
And I would say, thank you, Paul. I would say that it's very common that for a rated transaction, the underwriting fees would be less than non-rated. So what you're seeing here is not unusual, and it's exactly what I would expect to see. And I think the other part of this is the underwriter really, and me as financial advisor, we have we have some control in how the transaction is structured, but Standard & Poor's is going to look at this and they don't really care about me and they don't care about the underwriter. They're going to look at the CID board. They're going to look at the financials. They're going to look at the bond structure and they're going to assign a rating based on that. So while you could say just because the underwriting firm can have a higher fee, they're going to steer us towards a non-rated transaction. That's not true. I mean, these are reputable underwriters and, they're going to want to do what's best for you as well. And if we can get the rating, I mean, that's a win-win for everybody. But to Chuck's question, I can't sit here and say, yeah, we're definitely going to have a BBB bond rating.
That's right.
I mean, I think we will. I think so much that I would say we need to plan to do that and take the time out of the timetable. Because if we can lower your borrowing cost by 75 basis points, that's a lot of money on $35 million.
Well, I agree with Paul. When I look at this and the risk and the cost, I think there's the way to go.
I agree. But I'm super chicken things, so
It has.
there's a little difference there.
Yeah, but not much.
Trying to have that too. That's my position, Mayor,
I have no luck gambling.
right?
So-
Alex, Brian, Billy?
It's interesting, I don't gamble either, but even if I was, I didn't know what I gambled with. I still kind of not, there's a lot of things in here that still, but I think it's interesting, I thought Scott's gonna be picking it up for us because we hired for that position.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think it'll be more of a because of the consumption side of it, but I don't know, I mean, I don't know if I'm the pros or not, but that's who I am. I was just thinking about what Gail thinks, because I know you get involved with, what your thought? Do you mind, Brian?
No,
So I don't know if you can do this, but if it was mine, I'd call Davis and go, what are you thinking? Why, how did you get to this non-rated number? Because that's your area. And maybe you can't do that. You can't have that discussion. I don't know.
I mean, I would say too, that for non-rated economic development transactions, I mean, we're seeing around $20. So what Davidson responded with is not out of the ordinary. I think the responses that came in well under that are the ones, I think they're just trying to be aggressive, trying to reflect what's going on in the marketplace right now. And then on a rated basis, I think in that $8, $9, $10 range is where a rated transaction like this would come in at, which 3 of the 4 responses were in that range. It just happened that Davidson came in way below what I, would have expected to see.
Mr. Chair, Can I ask, can you mute the microphone for a minute? Senator Biden,
Paul, are we allowed to?
are we
I don't think-
allowed to?
I don't think we're allowed. to do that.
Is it ever, tell me, Molly, if it's like a board of alderman, can we ask to go into like an exec session?
We don't have that on the agenda today.
Yeah.
Then my suggestion is maybe, if Billy, if you wanna still talk about it further, that maybe we double back and we can either do a Zoom or a Teams call or something.
I
Just to
agree.
kind of finalize that.
That's what my initial intention was not to make a decision at this meeting.
Yeah.
but to get all the facts on the table.
Right.
And then as soon as Paul can get a special meeting posted to where we can, call, a Zoom call, don't have to come here. We can follow back up through that process.
That'd be great.
So-
We'll certainly help them each of that.
Does anybody, well, since we're there, does anybody have any additional questions for Todd or anything like that?
I've got, so, and I don't know if this fits into this or not, or fits into the whole thing, but just timeline of money.
90
So,
days.
Well, so you got 9 million bankers around that as a CID. You've got 6.2, it's coming eventually, I think that comes through ARPA, not exactly sure how it comes. So the total, there's 15 million and we're still collecting. Okay, so you got 37 million here, and we said 32 million is what the CID said, so there's a $5 million flexibility flow. But can you use all of your existing funds and then replace them with the bonding later on? Because I think the interest rate's gonna be.
Yes, you have the ability to spend CID money and then reimburse yourself out of the proceeds of the bonds at the time they're done. That is possible. Now, I think where the challenge is gonna lie is with a notice to bid, or when you start the bid process, when you open bids, and then when you do the notice to proceed, that I don't know that, and I guess this may be more of a city issue, but we definitely would want to have the bonds sold prior to the notice to proceed is issued. And
Like your address.
Yeah, so like you have to be 100% funded to do it. To, to get into a contract.
I asked that same question there a couple of days ago, because with our company, we'll bid out a project, and then once we may not be fully funded for it, we'll do a letter of intent with the company that wins that. And see if we're funded moving forward. So, but I guess because of it being a municipality, city states have to be fully funded, is my understanding.
And I don't know, Chuck, if we want to have that discussion now or save that for the special meeting, but I think we do need to understand the point at which bonds are sold, the point at which bond proceeds have been closed and dollars available, and understand what the city's requirements are of when that happens. Because typically, we would wait until the bids have been opened. That way we know how much bonds to sell. And so we had sized, I think the numbers, Gail, to 34 million is what we've currently got it sized at. But if we wait till the bids are open, if we need to move that to 34.5 or 35 million, or the bids come in really well and we can borrow less, then we've got the ability to adjust the amount of bonds being sold. We have the bond sell before the notice to proceed is issued, which I think was that in December for notice to proceed.
Yes.
And that means, so if the bond issue equals the cost, that means that there's been a decision made, basically, that the CID would be $15 million.
Right, and I'm not sure on the ARPA, I don't know what the status of that is.
Yeah, so early on in this discussion, there was discussion on the board as far as interim financing before we went to bond. Is that timing, is that something, it kind of seems to me with that much money in the bank, that we might be in a position to go locally, regionally, to get a line of credit, as we discussed earlier on, to get you to that point for full funding and have that and kind of play the interest rate game that Gail was talking about. Again, I don't know timing wise, but that was an early on discussion of, do we have to go to bonds immediately before we go into this project? So I don't know.
Well, like you said, I mean, we have to be fully funded.
But you get line of credit to fund the rest of the
And I
way.
get that.
Yeah. And you know, it depends on interest rate and what that cost would be, but it would be interesting to see what that money factor is based on that. Because I think we're in a pretty good position, I would think, with that much money sitting there to be able to back up. You know, it seems to me you're looking at 6 to 8 months, maybe a year at most, to be able to fund this project to get in place of bonding. So,
And Steve, I've given that some consideration and yes, there is an option not to do long-term financing at this point. But we're also in a market with short-term financing, the way the yield curve is, the cost of funds for a short-term financing may not be too far off of having your long-term fixed rate financing in place.
Okay.
So if we did that, you know, we are taking on additional risk that you don't know what's going to happen in the markets in 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think the safer approach would be to get the permanent financing in place now. And then if the market does improve, and I agree, Gil, I think a year from now, 2 years from now, we may have lower rates. But where you benefit from the lower rates is when you get ready to do the second series of bonds.
okay. Thank you, Jason.
Right, what do we need to do, Paul, in regards to setting up a special meeting for this?
well-
And I guess a follow-up question. If any of the board members have any additional questions for Todd, can those go directly to Todd prior to, so that we can have answers at that meeting, or is there a
Yes.
cycle that you need to run through?
No, yeah, no, I mean, if somebody has a question between now and next week sometime, please reach out to Todd. That's why we kind of envisioned a two-step process. It's a big decision and always hate hitting decision makers on the fly, you know, with just a short deliberation time. And then Chuck, I can look at calendars and throw out some dates next week and find something that works.
What do we have to do? We have to post the meeting 24 hours in advance, right?
Yes.
Can you look at Friday or Monday?
So I know I cannot do it this Friday. I could do it.
Yeah. So we
You thinking, so on Monday, sometime between 10:30 and 3:30?
Monday? Is that what we said? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm wide open Monday right now.
I've got 1:30 to 3 open, or maybe it'll only take an hour. It's 1:30 to 2:30.
Yeah, but
Don't I? What's that? You say yes and Ellen, Chuck?
I think a half hour. is
Half
fine.
hour. I love that.
I think it's gonna be quick.
Okay.
That's why I think it's beneficial for everybody that has any questions, to get those questions to Todd prior, so that we can get answers and we can, you know, Todd will be able to provide answers during that meeting. We can make an important decision. I'm wide open on Monday. Did anybody else have any restrictions? You said 1:30.
1:30.
Okay.
I guess the
Todd,
only
you
other
good?
thing,
I am.
the only other thing, yes, I just wanted to loop back. I think it was Kathy who started to ask about the closed session. And
Yeah.
obviously, we don't have that on today's agenda, but maybe Kathy, you and I can talk offline. I
Okay.
don't know off the top of my head what would be appropriate for this discussion for closed. The bids have already been opened. It's just kind of a policy decision at this point.
Yeah, I'll talk with Holly about it after this and then I'll get back to you, Paul.
Okay,
Good. So let's go ahead and throw it in for 1:30 on Monday.
30 minutes.
30 minutes. Mr. Chairman.
I mean, if you want to do an hour, that's fine, but I think 30 minutes is all.
Yeah, I'm putting in for 30. Is that a Zoom?
Yeah, we'll do, we'll do it digital. Okay. We'll move on to the next one. Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, are we, since Sherry's not here, we're gonna push off the 2025?
Sorry, yeah, I don't have that information, I apologize.
No worries, no worries, no worries. All right, Michael, let's go ahead and jump on the relocation.
Share document. I'm gonna jump on. As these get handed out, we finished up the utility company initial meetings, also their initial dollar amounts that were pushed to us on there. Came up collectively as a group as we were uneasy with making sure that what their systems are that go underneath the ground are exactly what they're proposing. They're designing their own systems. We came up with a affidavit of existing systems below grade and upgrades will bear the cost of the utilities. So if they're expanding at all, they do. What this chart is showing you here is our worst case scenario on the first flush that you would go through, or the first run, right at $3.2 million. We had another meeting with them and said, hey, you or the person that is your CEO of the company is gonna sign an affidavit that says you're only doing what's above ground, below ground at the city cost or at the cost of the CID. Some people took the opportunity to revise their numbers, and that's what your red numbers are you see there. The other people are still sitting on the outline. With that being said, just that comment and that little bit of push saved us $31,000 on the front. I'd also like to highlight that the agreements that are going through there are the same type of agreements. It's not to exceed, and we're gonna bill on what actually gets put into the ground, but this is their idea that's there. Summit Natural Gas, there's no charge to the city, which is a thankful blessing. Nobody can work on their system, and it's their system, and they said, hey, we understand what you guys are trying to do. You've always worked well with us. We'll move our stuff for free. Not very many people say that. It is a blessing, and we took it, and I said, are you sure? 3 times, and it's reported, so we're there. Show Me Technologies is still reworking. There's a little bit. Brightspeed, Liberty Electric. I had presented these before. Liberty and White River on the last meeting is $1.3 million, and they require 50% build money on that once we get into contract with them. White River Electric is a little bit different or a little odd, you would say, is as soon as we get in an agreement, we owe them $25,000 for plans because they don't design in-house. With $1.1 million with 50%, so a total of $1.157 million. White River Connect is the fiber that we successfully, since I've been at the city, I told them no. They threatened, we did very well. We'll put it that way. They don't have any infrastructure in there. So to bill for new means that the city or the contract, once it goes in, what they're asking for, we bill them. So again, it's money that's coming back in for whatever conduits that they've already identified with Jeremy Jackson that they want. As you all know, if you have internet with Altice bought Sunlink got bought out by Optimum, so there's where we're at now. So Optimum is the game, 184,000, and they're the ones that came back with 161. So what I guess I'm doing is bringing it to you for your acknowledgement, and also I need to bring this to the Board of Aldermen because these are all contracts, as Jeremy showed on the screen, is one of the responsibilities of the city. Or myself to make sure that we get to the Board of Aldermen, we can get into these agreements to get this going. With that being said, is you would be saying that you would pay that back. So.
Michael, are you sure these go to the board?
Yes.
They can't just be by me. Like the other contracts. I thought we were doing.
Are they
Just for process.
multi-year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the question. I think they're gonna do lots of here.
I also thought that was for budgetary items.
Oh, that's probably really where it lies, yeah, because this is outside.
This is on.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I was just trying to cut process time, you know.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, the mayor wants to log report. Did you cover this in our report section?
It's important to acknowledge that this piece is part of the piece to make all the bidding pieces go, so. That's my update on that, and
This piece is not part of the 32, right?
correct, it's outside your 30.
So this is the
Yeah, so 3.2 million is where we like. Or less, so it's actually, with the deductions from those two companies, you're at 3.1196, so a little over 3 million.
So Liberty's number, White River's number, those are accurate.
They're sticking to them right now.
Okay. Showing we're still waiting on our revised.
Correct. If they choose to, it was all due on Tuesday, and as anybody knows that works with utility companies, it was due Tuesday. So, but I think it was well worth looping back for one more meeting, although pull my hair out in that many meetings in a row. It was a good meeting. So it's good for the board.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome, and that's your update for that. Okay. Any questions?
Do you need a motion or anything, or?
I don't,
No?
it's
Yeah.
not on the agenda for
Yeah.
efforts, it's not, so.
Okay.
We may tag on to one of their special meetings.
Right, easement negotiations.
So the update on that, I printed this out just for colored pictures for everybody to look at. This is the dashboard that we get. We've talked about this multiple times. Easement signed are 7 of 49, so we're well on our way. As you know, from the last meeting, we updated that that everybody had contact. So which is really good. We've also, just to let you know, we've reached out to Ann on some of those ones that we think that some of the board could help us move along a little bit. I'm highly confident that we're doing well. Some of the people that are still sitting out there have multiple properties, so once you get one to go, they kind of cascade with it. So that is something that we have to do before we put it out to bid. You want to get to 100% or as close as you can. As far as the city-owned properties, we took that through. I think I said that, I'm gonna make sure I say it here. We took it to the mayor. The mayor has the ability to sign for that. Whitewater is still getting ready to sign. There seems to be no problem with that. And then we're only, the tracks, had a couple questions that they wanted clarified, which we worked through that. And then Hughes. And so all the city-owned properties are all lined up, ready to go. And theirs is an understanding versus an actual easement. So that just provides a little bit of map and a little bit of update. And since it's only once a month with you guys, but we meet with them once a week, we may be reaching out to you individually to suggestively help us get to the finish line, which each person.
Have you had any specific strong pushbacks? Are you anticipating any struggles?
There's some that are still on the fence to really understand the whole project. So we get an update by property. And I think what we do is just kind of let people work through with Jeremy and myself and easement acquisition. And then maybe the next meeting actually list out who's still out there. If that's appropriate.
Super helpful if you're talking to any of the neighbors to suggest that they.
Yeah, I thought this was gonna be way easier than what was. I mean, they made contact with everybody, but you know, the education part of, yes, this is a great thing for you, and we're spending millions of dollars, you know, up and down this corridor in front of your business, you know, and of course, the same concerns that we talked about throughout the meeting. I'd be nervous too. What are you doing in my front yard?
We thought segment 3 was. It was a process, and it took quite a bit of time.
Yeah,
to get it done. We had some outliers that scratched my back.
Right.
So it's one of those things.
Yeah, that's still one of my big concerns. Is time.
Yeah.
So this next document that's coming towards you, sorry, Chuck, I'm getting me going.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Keep it.
All right,
Keep it.
I'm trying to respect all the time, and at any time, if we want to go any deeper in anything. This is a colorful piece of paper that
We worked with MoDOT on.
It's a share.
Yeah, it's a share. It's a 6-piecer. It's not a whole bunch of information other than trying to let you all know where we're at. As you know, the $6.2 million, it'll probably be ran as something similar to the governor cost share. MoDOT is well aware of it. They are going to be the grantors of that money that are moving through. We also, across the top, it'll show all the different agreements that are in there in the TAP agreements. So MoDOT 82373 is $800,000. That's the money that the city put into the intersection that at 165. So we've kind of talked about that a little bit in the past. The TAP for the $400,000 is the original TAP that we received that was specifically tied to segment 1 and 2. The TAP 2024 is the newest TAP that we've gotten for you, and that's going to go to the Board of Aldermen relatively shortly. And that's for $485,386 for more of your crossings that are there. So the hot crossings that are there. The caveat to that one is part of that money that was in there, I tied to Shepherd of the Hills. I take full responsibility for that. That probably wasn't a smart move on my part, so we may have to leave some money on the table because that would require a year-long study of environmental impacts and so on and so forth. So MoDOT respectively said, hey, you probably want to leave that behind, and we probably will. So, but that's still what's that's tying back to and why it's important to the board is we're tying back to segment 3 crosswalk. So as we've come up with the Z crossing with Jeremy, and then we added the layer of Hawk that's on there being the safest one, we're trying to treat it all as one segment. We should be able to go back through and do that. The caveat of that $485,000 that's there is we have to go to design and then go out to bid separately to this. MoDOT had made some suggestions to us in our phone call that you take all this money that you have pooling around and you pool it all together as one. And so you have the federal guidelines at one point. So what that means would be, I would need a head nod that that's the right thing to do because I'm combining projects together. And the reason we talk about that is there's $800,000 that we have allocated for 165/grant. That money, MoDOT's not sure I can spend it all. So it has to deal with pedestrians, it has to deal with safety, it has to deal with some things. So we could take that money and pull it all underneath the main project of segment 1 and 2 and spend it all there. But it would have to be the acknowledgement that we're spending the money that was allocated there that you would be putting back to the same point. It's a little bit complicated, but it's an accounting thing. And the reason it's important to talk about now is Jeremy talked about earlier, she's still on the line if she's still listening, but we had talked about in segment 1 and 2, the crosswalks, she was gonna peel off her contract. So we only have federal guidelines on that. And that's very important to talk about that. If we do that and I need to spend more money on segment 1 and 2, we'll have to expand the scope of work a little bit, but it flows the money a little bit. It's a decision. It's an accounting decision. The reality is on the MoDOT 802373 is if I can't get them to agree to let us spend all 800 there, it just sits in the account until we go forward. But that's how we were trying to fund everything.
But somebody explained to me what you just said.
Yeah.
So the 800,000 is earmarked at MoDOT for pedestrian safety. So it has to be used on sidewalks and pedestrian crosswalks only. It can't be used on a traffic signal, it can't be used on road. It can only be pedestrian safety. So if we tie that 800,000 to segment 1 and 2, it federalizes the whole project.
Oh. No.
But if we use that 800,000 in the place where we have the 3 median islands to improve them a little bit more, and then use some of the $6 million that's coming from the state for the 165 and 76, then we don't federalize the whole project.
Brilliant.
Yeah, no, that sounds very good.
Sorry, I didn't bring
No,
up the
that's
speed
okay.
ahead
It's
of
just,
this.
no, that's all right.
So,
Just sometimes a different way of saying it helps encapsulate it. Otherwise, we go into that beautiful mind movie.
Yeah.
With whatever Russell, whoever that's, Russell Crowe, yes.
So Michael, the 800,000, we would be using that for the segment 3 crossing.
For,
segments 1 and 2 crossings.
I thought we didn't want that in there because it was federal road.
No, they're already gonna be broken up because we got a TAP grant for those crossings. We didn't have the hawk signals in those crossings at the beginning. So Jerry, they're already broken out to be.
They are.
Separate from the other.
Yeah. So the
So
way,
So when we see the projected cost for segment 1 and 2. It's gonna be minus the crossings.
no. It'll all be bid as one project, but that the document set it will be separated out so that we can meet the criteria for bid documents
Federal
and
bid.
such. But it will all be bid at the same time.
So the only thing that the SID board will have to pay on that portion is the 20%, because it's an 80-20, so it's a 20% match.
Right. And it's reimbursable, bear in mind, it is that those monies are
Right.
reimbursable, so the monies are expended and then you're reimbursed the 80%.
oh yeah, that's important. So you spend it before you get your 80% back.
So the median crossings in segment 1 and 2 are already federalized because of the TAP grant. So if we use the 800,000 that is sitting at MoDOT right now for those crossings, then all of that will be federalized money. But we don't federalize the whole.
Yeah.
2 miles there.
We did a very similar thing when we bid out the Highway 86 project, which, as you all may know, was a project that utilized governor cost share monies, which also have some federalized funds in them as well. And so there were private funds and federalized funds, and we had bridge funds. And so there were 3 different funding mechanisms that were combined on one project. It was let as one project. And so the way we put the documents together is really critical. And we've done that. We're accustomed to doing that. So that's how we would handle this one as well.
And you're still planning on putting up second crosswalks to the C and
With the 2024, but that's not even been designed, so.
right,
Just that money.
right. Okay, any questions, any other questions on that?
It's still a question, but with this all this, is there like any time that you have to spend in terms of the earmark for this TAP grant for the state? I say like, I know our project is starting, so we don't break down to January. But they're like, I know the funding for 2025, the state will probably give us more money, hopefully. But the question is it
Every grant has a time constraint, has an end date, has extension allowabilities, and then a drop dead date where the money must be spent. That you can't extend out into.
so
It's a
typically-
hope that they go into the extension.
typically what it is all within one calendar year?
TAP aren't those about a year.
They're a little over
A
a year,
little over.
because the funding has been very slow, that's why there were 2 taps in 1 year, we went, got the second. tap.
That's something
They put it out, people all bid in and said, yeah, we want it, they gave out the money, and they're like, wait, we have a lot more money left, and they did it again, and that's how we picked up the next month.
So what about the state money?
Save money? Sure.
The 6.2.
The 6.22 is funded and good, and it just how that gets paid out through MoDOT. We asked for it as shared as a cost share, governor's cost share, so it flows through a lot less difficult than this stuff.
Okay.
This stuff requires years of studies that are behind it, so.
More like a donation,
And that's what we're
funding
cleaning up.
as opposed to a grant, so it's not a reimbursable type situation, it's a we're joining it.
Thank you.
Then the last part of the same thing is, I wanted to bring up really quickly, you can just move this down. These were your original concepts for, Granite Road and 165, so there's actually 2 pieces that are there through Olson. And what I wanted to do was hopefully, what I was looking for today is a little bit of direction on narrowing it down to a few, or maybe your next meeting if today's too much to think about. But at one point, we ran into this.
found that y'all have paid for the studies, and paid for these drawings that were there. This helps our newest group, CJW, kind of get a little bit of inspiration of where to, they're supposed to bring us 3 design examples since you approved for that. But this is a huge tipping off point, and this is from your master plan time. So I'll let y'all digest that, and, you know, if the board members circle, or you guys come up with a little bit of direction, but that's what we're looking at doing at that intersection. That's what that RFQ went out to ask for, doing something with the signalized intersection, so.
Well, and this really wasn't master plan, this was after master plan, it's just so everyone knows. And my recollection of these were given something, this is what
Yeah,
got
you got.
on the paper.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember any real design discussion. And obviously they didn't go very far with, this is as far as it's been. And none of them really match the design direction we've got now going with.
And who we're paying, there's a CJW to come back with 3, right? We'll come back with 3 designs, so I'm sure they're gonna come back with something. Right. Like, I love the B concept plan on this one over here, but the problem is the only people that are seeing it flying helicopter.
Yeah.
I think it looks cool, but I mean,
Drones,
yeah.
Yeah. To
drones.
get some
Well, I don't know.
video, but otherwise,
Yeah.
nobody knows it's a bee, and
Exactly.
it looks weird from the
Maybe
street
rent it.
level.
Yeah.
65 and 76 is a B also, nobody realized that.
Oh, yeah.
What is,
65 and 76.
65
is it B?
Well,
From the air.
Yeah, if you go circle, another circle with the 2 lines. There was originally like a huge plan for a huge flag down there. But it was supposed to be some sort of, what was it, that big eagle, giant eagle? Like a $1.5 million eagle they wanted to put down there. So what I'm taking away from is, none of doing anything for anybody.
And for inspiration, can you not show them what we're doing in segments 1 and 2 instead?
Sure, yeah, I can share that with Jaren. I'll ask Jaren.
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
That would make a little more sense to me than any of these.
Thinking the process.
Yeah. Let's don't go backwards, let's keep going forward.
That's fine, thank you.
Anything else there, Michael?
That's it. Ellen Tree.
Okay, move on.
now look at that, it's scratch.
Any introduction of any new business? Anyone? Business?
You.
Question on your follow-up with Jeremy, when you said meeting for the bonding, that's where there, look, Jeremy coming back to your stuff. and get it going.
So I think that's next meeting. We talked about doing it too as well.
Yeah, I think if you wait till next meeting, you're gonna be behind your schedule with what you're doing.
Yeah, well, no, I hear you. I guess the real question is, Jeremy, are you still there?
I am.
When do you think you could have that put together for us? Cause that's the reality of it.
So tell me, I mean, in very clear words, what your expectation is. What do you want to see? Exactly.
Above ground design that you feel has been approved by or has given you enough direction to move forward with by the CID to put in construction documents.
Okay.
With, so we can't get pricing yet because pricing's not gonna be ready until the end of August.
Yeah.
It's the finishes, it's not the pricing aspect yet, because pricing's coming in at the end of August. So you said you were gonna pull out of packages the direction that you felt that you were given by all of us, so that's what I think we'd all like to see.
Awesome.
So,
Okay, so I think we should. Yeah, I think we should do that in a special meeting, and I think that's what you're suggesting as well. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, it's all based on your timeline, on when you think you can get that together. We'll see when we can meet based on that.
In
You
advance,
bet.
you know.
So what I would like to do is, I'd like to try to meet with you. I'd like to try to meet with you on the, maybe the week of, I have some time the week of the 12th. Yep, I have some time the week of the 12th. I can send some available dates if you like. To the Tuesday, the 13th looks really, really good to me in the afternoon.
That's a Board of Alderman meeting day.
Oh,
That's-
okay.
That's not gonna work.
Okay, not the best day, huh?
And so, yeah, I review that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that. as well.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Jeremy.
I'm sorry. Let's say it again.
What were you saying?
How about on the 14th? How about on the 14th? That's the day after the Alderman's meeting. Does that work?
Here, let's do this. Why don't you send out possible dates, the 13th, 14th? I'm flying on Monday. I'm flying home on Friday. So I can't do Monday or Friday. 13th, 14th, I'll be here all day.
So just
Or no.
13th and 14th.
13th, 14th, 15th.
Yeah.
No, 14th, 15th, because the Board of Alderman meeting on the 13th.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So 14th, 15th, send out what your availability is, and then would it be possible to float the package to us prior as well?
I can, sure. Yep, I think I can. It won't be much before that, but I can try to get it to you. Yep.
Well, if you can get it to us on Tuesday, since you said you were gonna be able to meet on Tuesday, that at least
Yep.
gives us
Yeah.
the day before or 2 days before to review.
You bet. You bet.
So, yeah, availability on the 14th and 15th, and the package on the 12th would be great.
Awesome. On the 13th. Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay.
As well. Okay.
Awesome.
Any additional comments, concerns? Everybody
Thanks
else?
for sticking around, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew we needed to set a date, so I hung out until we had an opportunity to do that.
Motion to adjourn. Mayor, second?
Second.
Second, Mike, all in favor, get up and walk out. If you're not in favor, just stay silent. Great.